I'm Dr. John Gartner.
And I'm Dr. Harry Segal.
And welcome to another session of Shrinking Trump.
This is our 22nd show. Hard to believe we've been doing this for 22 weeks, John. And John and I are both clinical psychologists, and we began the show because we realized that no one in the media or in the ruling classes, even among the public, no one seemed to be noticing the ways in which Donald Trump was suffering from the early signs of dementia that we saw in his strange physical gait, what John likes to refer to as phonemic paraphasias, which are moments where Trump begins to say a word and can't complete it, sometimes hides by getting flustered and going to another word, and most importantly, by a deterioration in the complexity of his thinking. That is, instead of saying elaborate, vicious things about people, it's been reduced to saying very crude, very simplistic, vicious things about people. And that's due largely to his severe personality disorder that's called malignant narcissism with paranoid sociopathic features. Have I got that right, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've been making progress because it seems that people in the media and other politicians and the public is starting finally to catch on. John?
So what I wanted to talk about this week is, I know a lot of people saw the New York Times Siena poll this weekend and freaked out. I think it has her only leading by a point, or him leading,
as everyone always does once a month when that damn poll comes out, which is always an outlier, right?
Yeah, there's something rotten at the New York Times. I really don't know what it is, but obviously it's not just the New York Times. We've seen polls all over the place. Some look optimistic, and some look like just razor thin, and some even tilt a little his way. And so everybody is scared. Everybody's nervous. Everybody is really on pins and needles. And what I wanted to kind of suggest today is, look, Harry, you and I, we've talked a lot about the fact that we're trained as therapists. We were actually trained under what was called the scientist practitioner model, where we were trained to conduct research, to evaluate research, to teach research design. I've taught statistics at the graduate level. We understand empirical research. We have to understand empirical research to get our degrees. It's something that I happen to actually be good at and actually be interested in. So I've pursued research in my career. And I happen to have I'm not Rain Man, but a talent for kind of doing statistics in my head. And by that, I mean, we're looking at this one metric, these polls, right? And I would like to suggest today there are 9 other metrics that are actually more significant and more predictive that we're not looking at. So first, let me just say this. The whole problem with polls at the get-go is it's very hard to get a random sample. That's what we need in science, is a random sample. And why is it hard to get a random sample? Well, for the simple reason that they use a lot of landlines. A lot of people know this. And it's a very select group of people who use landlines. It's older voters who tend to be more conservative. Now they're also trying to reach people through other means like cell phones. But I believe that there is actually a systematic difference between red voters and blue voters in terms of how technologically sophisticated they are as a group, not as individuals, but as a group. And when you're more technologically sophisticated, you don't answer cell phone calls from numbers you don't know. So anyway, I think, and then there may be some bad actors actually who I think are trying to make the polls look closer than they are, and then that's a different issue.
Can I, John? Can I just add something to what you're saying? So, one way to think about this, if you aren't familiar with research design, which is if you're going to poll and figure out to predict how people are going to vote, it's not just a random sample. You're looking for a representative sample. You're looking for a sample that will include all the different components of the voting population, and then you want to see how well what they do. And in years past, before cell phones, when everyone had landlines, not only could you get that kind of sample by randomly calling landlines, you could even go to places like in Ohio and other places which seem to be representative of political parties and affiliations. And that's gone. You can't do that anymore. There's no landlines. Populations are more dispersed. You can't find a town that is 50% one way or the other. So we're looking at polls that are based on likely voters, but please continue. It's they're not good samples. They don't really predict much.
Actually, that's a great segue into point number 2, which is that these polls, some of them try to model on representative samples, what they call likely voters. So a likely voter sample is one that breaks down along demographic lines like the last election. So, of course, in one sense, they will always be wrong, right? Because every election's different. It's like stepping into a river. You can't step into the same river twice. So it makes sense that you would use the last election as your best rational predictor of what a representative sample would look like. But here's the thing. We're seeing massive movements, big numbers that are suggesting that the composite of this electorate is not going to be the same as the last electorate. And one of the ways that we can see that is by looking at voter registration. Voter registration is an excellent proxy for voter enthusiasm in a certain demographic, and also the percentage of that group that will actually be part of the electorate. So I want to show a video about that.
We're tracking something really interesting going on right now. It's a surge in voter registration in key groups ahead of the November election. Among young black women, registration is up more than 175%. You heard that right, more than 175% in 13 states. That's compared to the same time in 2020. This, according to the data firm TargetSmart. Registration has also increased among young Latinas and Black Americans.
It's incredibly unusual to see changes in voter registration that are anywhere close to this. I mean, to remind people, 175% is almost tripling of registration rates among this specific group. You just don't see that sort of thing happen in elections normally.
And what does that tell us, if anything, about either enthusiasm, attention, propensity to vote for these newly registered participants?
Tells us a lot. The reason that we look at this voter registration data is because the polls will only tell us so much. The polls tell us how people are going to vote. They don't tell us if or who is going to vote.
And you know, Trump always says, I've never seen anything like it. But actually, this guy is a data scientist, and he's saying, we've never seen anything like it.
Right.
That this is a mind-blowing number. You don't see triple the voter registration, year over year. So something really, really big and quantitative and measurable is happening, but it's not the top line number. It's a sort of below the surface, but it's a profound quantitative movement.
And it's happened since Kamala became the nominee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things we're going to be contrasting are the numbers that Biden had, a few months ago, and the numbers that Kamala has in a lot of these key demographics. And this is absolutely one of them. So actually, this brings us to another one of those key demographics. Let's talk about the youth vote. A new poll of young voters shows Harris with a commanding 31-point lead over Trump. So this poll actually was very respectable. It's the Harvard youth poll that they do twice a year. And this 31% difference is the highest that's basically ever been measured. It's twice as much as Biden had. So Biden had, like a 12-point advantage or something like that with youth. She's got a 31-point advantage. And I remember my son, who's very politically involved, said, Dad, he's a college student. I just don't know one person who would work, wants to work for Biden. He really did not appeal to the young people. He just didn't. And the issue about being too old, look, they think I'm too old. They think we're all too old. That's the narcissism of youth. And then there were other issues that they just didn't feel he, dovetailed with them on, things like that, Israel and whatnot. But basically, now they've brought all of this enthusiasm. So not only have we gone from a 12-point advantage to a 31-point advantage. And by the way, in the election that Biden won, he had a 20-point advantage among youth. So this is bigger than the margin he had when the Democrats won. Okay, so there's that. And then there's the issue of how motivated are these young Democrats to vote. Let's see that slide. What's more, an increasing amount of young Democrats also say they will definitely vote this fall, moving from 66% in the spring to 74%, which is really a high number in this latest survey. Republicans have less interest in the spring poll, 64% committed to voting versus 60% now. And then roughly a third of independents said they would definitely vote, which is a drop from 4 years ago at this time. So in other words, Democrats have increased their motivation to vote. Republicans and independents have, this is among the youth now, this is among the youth vote, have lost their enthusiasm to vote. And actually, there was an article in Washington Post, which I'm not going to show you because we torture our engineer Rex with way too much media, and I didn't want to drop it on him at the last minute. But today, there was a Washington Post article about this Harvard poll. And what I liked about it is they opened with an anecdote of a girl going through the dorms and knocking on doors in her dorm, telling people to get the heck out and register to vote, right? And I don't know about you, Harry, if you've ever done any door knocking. Have you ever done any door knocking? I've done some door knocking, and first of all, I don't think door knocking is actually very effective. Especially, door knock in the suburbs, you're not going to change anyone's vote. The one day that I did door knock in Philadelphia, though, for Hillary in an African-American neighborhood, was actually one of the days I realized she might lose. Because I spoke to about, 10 or 20, African-American, mostly women that day, and they all disliked Trump, really disliked him. But then I said, so are you going to vote for Hillary? And they'd say, I could tell they weren't going to vote. They were just telling me they were because, they wanted to make me happy or whatever. That drive to vote is very, very important. But what I was saying is that door knocking may not work so well in the streets, okay, but it works damn well in the dorms. Okay, because the people knocking on your door are your peers. They're your friends. They're people you pass on campus. Well, Kamala has doubled her youth vote staff. She, as we mentioned last time at the convention, she's got a whole strategy for engaging young people. She's got a whole social media team, and I think I told you at the convention she invited the top 150 influencers. And you and I had the dignity and self-respect not to be offended or hurt by the fact that we weren't invited because she was focusing on the young people. I'm not maybe there were better old people she could have invited than us too. But the point is they were focusing on the young people because to get them engaged. And Kamala is planning a swing state college tour. You know how Trump is so smart? He activated his base, right? His base was these rural, low information, low education voters, but no one had ever gone to the sticks to get their votes before. So when he had these rallies, he was really energizing his base. Well, you're not going to get any better base than a 31% spread. Okay, that 31% net approval rating for the candidate. So that's obviously the people we want to bring to the polls. These are the people we want to drive out. And so for her to be doing rallies at the major universities in every swing state, she's got a whole swing state college tour planned. This is going to really pay dividends. I'm very optimistic about it.
Okay.
So that's another metric that I'd like you to consider to be a little more optimistic about. And then probably here's the biggest one. I call them Trump's female troubles. Here is, I want you to see a video of Steve Kornacki talking about the gender gap. All right. The difference between men and women. So men overall as a group favor Trump and women overall as a group favor Kamala. The thing is, there's about twice as many women who favor Kamala as men who favor Trump. Let's let Steve Kornacki explain.
The gender gap, I think, one of the biggest stories here in this Harris lead in our poll, because look at this. Among men, Trump has a sizable lead. He's beating Harris by 12 points among men. Among women, Harris has a much more sizable advantage. Look at this. It's 21 points, 58 to 37 in Harris's favor among women. So you could see how that nets out in her favor, giving her that lead nationally. But also just take this in some perspective here. That would be a gender gap, 21 and 12, of 33 3 points. Now, we talked in 2020, in 2016 about seeing historically high gender gaps in those presidential elections. This would obliterate those gender gaps. This has been a staple. The gender gap has been since 1980 of American politics. But if we see anything like a 33-point gender gap in November, that's absolutely off the charts, even by modern standards.
Okay, again, off the charts, even by modern standards, from Steve Karnacki, who is not prone to excess and superlatives.
Oh, no. He's a data guy.
He's a data guy,
Data
and he's
guy.
saying
No,
this is, if this number holds up, this is mind-blowing, okay, and determinative.
Well, women vote more than men do anyway.
I was just going to mention that. So first of all, we've got 21% of the women. Women are 21% positive for Kamala, and men are only 12% positive for Trump. So that's a double. We've already doubled the number. 21 is almost twice as big as 12. And then you add the fact that women vote at higher rates than men. Okay, then it's really, that could be the election. I think that in the end, women will be the election.
Oh, I think so.
But, look, he's got a chance to win back women, right? He's got a chance, but he's not exactly using it very well. For example, look at this tweet, which you've probably all seen, about Taylor Swift, but I think we should still show it. I hate Taylor Swift, all caps, exclamation point. Okay, well, 300 million people follow her on Instagram. She's an icon to young women, and, well, really to a whole generation. I love her too. She's got millions and millions of fans. So that's not going to help you win over women, to demonize Taylor Swift, right?
You think? No, but again, what we've always said about Trump is that he can't play the long game, because she endorsed Kamala,
right,
and had that link in her website that generated 300,000 people registering to vote. He has to strike back,
right.
And how
Exactly.
easy would it have been to say, "I'm sad that Taylor's not supporting me, but I love her music."
Right.
All he had to say.
All he had to say. And by the way, it was 400,000 registrations in the first hour.
Incredible.
And again, that same demographic, younger people, women, people of color. Okay. And so it's the same landslide of people, rushing into the electorate. Now, so as you know, I've been working with George Conway and his anti-psychopath. So George and the anti-psychopath have had a huge initiative that they launched this week. They reached out to some of Trump's sexual assault victims and had them film commercials, which he is going to be showing on the air, but specifically, as he is prone to do, on Fox News and ESPN and the Golf Channel in Palm Beach, Florida, and Bedminster, New Jersey, where Trump and his cronies will be forced to watch it. Okay, so with that in mind, let's see those commercials.
1979, I had gotten on an airplane. The stewardess said to me, "Would you like to come up to first class?" In the window seat was a gentleman, said that his name was Donald Trump. The airplane took off, and all of a sudden, Donald Trump started groping me. He was trying to kiss me, and I'm trying to push him away. He was basically overpowering me. When he started putting his hand up my skirt, I got out of the seat, grabbed my purse, and went back to my original seat. And I certainly was shook up by the whole thing. 2 years later, at this fundraiser, up comes Trump and his wife. And he looked at me and he said, "I remember you. You're that cunt from the airplane." Donald Trump views women as for his entertainment. He is a serial predator. He has said it at point blank, and he's done it, and he will continue to do it.
Anti-Psychopath PAC Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Powerful.
Wow. That she could quote him like that and that he would remember.
Yeah. No, when it comes to his malevolence, he actually has a long memory.
Yeah. The denigration. I mean, one thing that people may not know, but there are some clinicians who don't even really think of rape as sexual. They think of it as aggressive, violent. And often the rapist is not sexually aroused. because it's all about diminishing and violating the person.
Yeah.
And there he is, and then he calls her that when he sees her at a party in front of his wife.
Right. So it's just repulsive and misogynistic at every level. At every level. And by the way, I forgot to mention, but let me say that we're going to have George Conway on the show again next week to talk about this campaign and to see what results it has. We'll see. But if it's been like other campaigns that he's done or other people like the Lincoln Project have done, it will probably provoke a reaction. And we're going to talk a little bit later about what Trump's reaction to all of this woman talk has been. But let's see the other ad.
My name is Natasha Stoynoff. In 2005, I went to interview Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. At one point, Melania went upstairs to change her clothes for the next photo shoot. And Trump said to me, I want to show you this beautiful painting, this beautiful room. He leads me to this room, pushes me against the wall, and starts kissing me forcefully. I tried to push him. He kept coming back at me. I was in shock and smothered, and he had his hands here against my shoulders. I felt sick inside. I felt horrified. And thank goodness the butler charges into the room. Like many women, I blamed myself. So Trump turned to me and said, you know we're going to have an affair, don't you? And Melania was approaching. I was horrified. When the Access Hollywood tape came out, and also stories of many other women, including E. Jean Carroll, I realized I was not to blame, that he was just a predator of women. What could have happened if the butler had not come into the room? Donald Trump is an adjudicated sexual assaulter. We cannot elect this man as president.
Anti-Psychopath PAC Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
For those of our viewers who are listening to this, what's amazing about this clip, this commercial, is that there are actually photos from the photo shoot on the day that he assaulted this reporter. So you see him standing with Melania, who's almost beatifically pregnant, and looking very beautiful. And you know that within minutes of those photos that he made this assault on this young journalist.
Yeah. And that really brings up some of the real pure psychopathy of it, right? In other words, it doesn't even make him anxious, right, to be assaulting a woman a few feet away from his wife. It's almost part of the sport of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if she succumbs, then, he has a sexual experience. But if she doesn't, he gets the joy of humiliating her and making her uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So he can't lose.
So look, it is not lost on Trump that he is losing the election because of women. So, we're going to show a tape. It's a little bit longer than those we usually like to show, but this is his argument for why women should vote for Trump.
All right, so we have to talk business. I always thought women liked me. I never thought I had a problem. But the fake news keeps saying women don't like me. I don't believe it. I think, you know why? They like to have strong borders. They like to have safety. Nothing personal. I think they like me. But I make this statement. Thank you. I love you too. I love you too. Thank you. But I think they like me because I represent something that's very important. I make this statement to the great women of our country. Sadly, women are poorer than they were 4 years ago, much poorer, are less healthy than they were 4 years ago, are less safe on the streets than they were 4 years ago, are paying much higher prices for groceries and everything else than they were 4 years ago, are more stressed and depressed and unhappy than they were 4 years ago, and are less optimistic and confident in the future than they were 4 years ago. I believe that. I will fix all of that and fast, and at long last, this nation and national nightmare will end. It will end. We've got to end this national nightmare. Because I am your protector. I want to be your protector. As president, I have to be your protector. I hope you don't make too much of it. I hope the fake news doesn't go, oh, he wants to be their protector. Well, I am. As president, I have to be your protector. I will make you safe at the border, on the sidewalks of your now violent cities, in the suburbs where you are under migrant criminal siege, and with our military protecting you from foreign enemies, of which we have many today because of the incompetent leadership that we have. You will no longer be abandoned, lonely, or scared. You will no longer be in danger. You're not going to be in danger any longer. You will no longer have anxiety from all of the problems our country has today. You will be protected, and I will be your protector. Women, women will be happy, healthy, confident, and free. You will no longer be thinking about abortion. So all they talk about abortion because we've done something that nobody else could have done. It is now where it always had to be, with the states and a vote of the people.
So, you'll no longer have to think about abortion. So it reminds me of that scene in Star Wars. These are not the droids you're looking for. Don't think about abortion. Because, we haven't even mentioned Roe v. Wade in this discussion about the female vote. And yet that's obviously a huge driver in what's going to make this a disproportionately female electorate.
Well, there's a reason why Democrats have put on the ballot in Montana and Arizona and other places. But I think it's important for us to note how patronizing he was.
Yeah.
It's as if he's talking to 50s housewives saying, don't you worry your silly little head about it.
Yeah.
I'm here to make you feel happy and safe.
Yeah.
As if this guy ever made a woman feel loved and respected and safe.
Right.
It's really vile and it's extreme. And look at and he was reading some of that off the teleprompter. So that was prepared for him. The tell is always, he always looks this way as he speaks, and then he'll turn and improvise and turn back to it. So they've even prepared this knowing how poorly he's doing with women.
Actually, Harry, a little trivia. That was a Truth Social post that he wrote himself, but he liked it so much, even though it's so unhinged, that he actually had read it word for word from the teleprompter. So I didn't show the written version because I thought it was more compelling to show the oral version.
Oh my God. I didn't know that.
But I like what you're saying about the patronizing. Like, you won't be sad. You won't be depressed.
I'll protect you.
Yeah, I'll protect you. I'll be your protector. And it's like, this guy is he's been assaulted 28 women that we know of. This is your protector.
No, but it's also as though he hasn't lived in the last 50 years. I mean, it's such a retrograde view of women. I mean, he's talking to them like they're babies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so offensive.
Good point. It is. No, I think that's really, and maybe those are the women that he thinks he can speak to, the women who come from that tradition, but that's a very small portion of women. Other women are going to be, as you say, totally offended by that patronizing.
This is probably how he seduces women who are vulnerable in his orbit. He becomes big and protective, and don't worry, I'll make sure everything's okay. You'll never be unhappy.
Yeah.
Monster.
Yeah. No, he is a monster. Now, let's contrast that with some of Kamala's statements. And you tell me, if you're a woman, who you think is going to protect you.
In state after state, including yours, these abortion bans have been passed that criminalize healthcare providers. In a couple of states, prison for life, Oprah. Prison for life in a couple of states for a doctor or a nurse who provides health care. And so it seems very apparent
even when the mother's life is in danger.
But see, here's the problem with that. So is she on death's door before you actually decide to give her help?
Mm-hmm. That's the problem.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. That you've got to prove you're on death's door.
Like literally a doctor or a nurse has to say, she might die any minute, better give her now care. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise I might go to prison for life in some cases.
But there, someone is talking about protecting women.
Right. From the great solution that Trump came up with to throw abortions back to the states. Which
No. Women aren't
everyone
thinking
wanted.
about that anymore. They're not thinking about that anymore. Do not think about abortion anymore.
That's right. They don't need to. They're not anxious. They're so happy.
I guess.
Trump
and they're not depressed anymore
cool.
either. They're not depressed. They were depressed.
No. It's all talk about snake oil salesman. Unbelievable.
Right.
I'll solve everything, even anxiety. We're out of business, John.
Anxiety, depression, really, we're out of business, right? Exactly. And here's another place where she's, defending women.
1 in 3 women in America lives in a state with a Trump abortion ban. This includes Georgia and every state in the South except Virginia. Think about that when you also combine that with what we know has been long-standing neglect around an issue like maternal mortality. Think about that when you compound that with what has been long-standing neglect of women in communities with a lack of the adequate resources they need for health care, prenatal, during their pregnancy, postpartum. Think about that. And these hypocrites want to start talking about this is in the best interest of women and children? Well, where you been? Where you been when it comes to taking care of the women and children of America? Where you been? How dare they? How dare they? Come on.
Now that's a protector.
Wow. It just gives me chills,
Yeah.
When she raises her voice like that, it's just so powerful.
I know.
Wow.
She's great.
What a pleasure.
So he's losing among women. I'd like to introduce some more metrics. Now, these are softer metrics, but still, I think they're important. Someone said after we lost the 2016 election, we shouldn't have been looking at polls. We should have been counting yard signs.
Right.
And actually, I think I told you this one of the moments where I realized we might lose the election is when I was driving to a meditation retreat in rural Pennsylvania, and I just kept seeing yard sign after yard sign after yard sign. It's like, this means something. This is an expression of voter enthusiasm.
Well, the morning of the 2016 election, I voted before coming to work. I was seeing patients at a private office, and my colleague, who's an older guy, lives out in a little town north of Ithaca called Trumansburg. And I said to him, how are you feeling? He said, I'm feeling terrible. He said, there was a line down the street of rural people lining up to vote, and it was very clear they had never voted before. So he called the election that morning for Trump. You had to keep your eyes open.
Right. So the thing about, and I'm not going to introduce a yard sign metric because I have not counted yard signs. I wish someone would. It would be a great political science dissertation, actually, if someone took the time to actually count the yard signs and correlate them with the electoral results.
Sure, it'll be a predictive variable of some.
I think it would explain some of the variance. But I'm going to suggest a slightly different measure of enthusiasm, which is we know that one of the things that was Trump's superpower was these rallies, right? Mm-hmm. Where people became so excited and energized and galvanized. Okay. Well, Kamala kicked him in the crowd size, right? When she said that people were leaving his rallies, that they were boring, that they were low energy. Mm-hmm. Well, I would just like to show you some segments of some Kamala rallies, and then we're going to show you some Trump rallies, and we'll see where do we see the greater enthusiasm. So I have to say, I haven't heard cheering like that since I heard the Beatles play in Shea Stadium in 1970, whatever it was. You couldn't hear the music because the people were screaming so loud. Of course, then they were also going, Ringo, Ringo, it was all these teenage girls, and I was like 8, so I was like really freaked out. I was a Beatles fan even then. But also, let's see how. What were you going to say something about that?
No, keep going. That's very funny.
But also, let's look at how Kamala is interacting with the staff. With the crowd at the rally.
Yep.
Think about that. Just imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails. He who has vowed to be a dictator on day one. He who has called for, quote, the termination of the Constitution of the United States of America. And let us be very clear. Someone who suggests we should terminate the Constitution of the United States should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again.
Never again. Listen to that crowd. They're with her. They are engaged, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, to be fair, Trump can get his crowds cheering for him. It's not all a snooze fest, but certainly it's diminished a lot, and you're going to
immensely diminished. Immensely, the rallies of 2024 are not the rallies of 2016
or 2020
or 2020.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah. No, you're right. So here, Kamala said in the debate that people were leaving Trump's rallies early. So the New York Times actually did a study of it. So let's see that graphic. This picture is a little small, so honestly, you probably can't see it very clearly. This is a Midas Touch tweet in which they say the New York Times did a close photographic analysis on how people leave Trump's rallies while he is speaking. And these pictures are showing the crowd after 6 minutes versus the crowd after 1 hour and 14 minutes, and showing the same sections. And what you see are large sections that are empty an hour later when he is still speaking.
Yeah.
And some people on Twitter have put together little cell phone videos that they've done themselves. And as we like to do, we've kind of strung some of them together. And what we're going to show you, for those of you especially who are only listening, and I understand that you need to narrate these things so you know what you're listening to, is about 5 different clips of people streaming out of Trump's rallies. Okay, but you can still hear him talking in the background. Sometimes it's somewhat faint. So if you're listening on the listening rather than watching, you may only hear him like talking in the background. We've got to get all the evil people. We got to round them up. They're all bad. But he's droning. He's droning, and people are just leaving. So let's see that supercut.
And they took it away from the guy that was beating her. But they're missing massive. It's not like they're missing 1%, which would be unacceptable.
When he won, they didn't shut up for 4 years. Remember that? He's not my president. He's not my president. 4 years.
Why are all these people leaving in the middle of the speech? Donald Trump is speaking right now.
So when we get in,
and all these people are leaving. I don't get it. Look at all these people leaving right in the middle of the speech. Are they bored? I don't understand. Why are all you guys leaving? Why are you guys leaving in the middle of the speech? I don't get it. Why is everybody leaving?
We have to work.
But take nothing for granted. You have to get out and vote. You just have to get out and vote. We cannot accept it. What they do is the only thing they do well. They cheat. Their policies are.
People are leaving Donald Trump's rally in Pennsylvania early, and now there's a sea of empty seats in this venue. Take a look.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl. New York, Bloom County, DA, Paul Battisti.
You know what that last one reminded me of? So I have 4 kids and 2 stepkids. I've been to a lot of graduations, okay? And I despise graduations. I absolutely hate them. You sit... You sit in this big stadium and just hear these people droning on and on with these platitudes. What were you going to say, Harry, about my hating
No.
graduation?
I just surprised you hate graduations. I want to hear it.
No, because they're boring. They're just boring. That's all. I am happy that for the people graduating, but I just feel like it's so rare for someone to do one well. Yeah, my stepson graduated from the NYU theater program. They had a good graduation.
I bet.
but most people don't. But it's that sort of quality of you hear the echoing of the mic, that kind of blah blah blah, and the big open space and people kind of walking out. It just has. So you're right. He has his moments. But the overall tone is he's just drained of energy. He's droning on and on. People came hoping for that jolt of adrenaline and dopamine. I don't think they're really getting it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
It's not like the people dancing at the Kamala rallies. Because, let's face it, those people are having fun, Harry. And I'm a little jealous. I'm a little jealous that those people at the Kamala rallies are having a lot of fun. They seem really happy and they're very free and they're dancing. Anyway, so I think that's one of the metrics that we should pay attention to.
I hear you.
So I have two more metrics, three actually, sorry. One of them, this is probably the softest one, but he is chickening out on the debate, on the second debate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not exactly a metric, but what I want to point out is he is at the disadvantage here. He is the one running away. So let's hear what he has to say about the possibility of a second debate.
She's done one debate. I've done two. It's too late to do another. I'd love to in many ways, but it's too late. The voting is cast. The voters are out there immediately. Is everybody voting? Please get out and vote.
And now let's hear what Kamala has to say about the debate.
Join me on the debate stage. Let's have another debate. There's more to talk about, and the voters of America deserve to hear the conversations that I think we should be having on substance, on issues, on policies. What's your plan? What's my plan? And we should have another one before Election Day.
So who looks stronger in that interchange? Obviously, she does. Yeah. And the Democrats, again, are messaging it well. Let's see how their immediate response. For those who are listening, it's a picture of Trump in a chicken suit holding a sign saying "Will not debate."
And thankfully, it's short enough that I don't have to hear a polka for more than 30 seconds.
And even though this is a video the Kamala HQ people made a few weeks ago when he was trying to pull out of the first debate, it's just such a classic. I feel like, Harry, we just have to bring back the clucking chickens. We just have to.
John. I thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
But because they already know everything. They say, oh, Trump's, not doing the debate. That's the same thing they say now. I mean, right now I say, why should I do a debate? I'm leading in the polls. And everybody knows her. Everybody knows me. But when I looked at the hostility of that, I said, why am I doing it? Let's do it with another.
Those chickens are priceless.
Well, it's just so funny. Yeah, I just want to say something very quickly about this, which is that, Kamala delivered in that debate, and she delivered with the exception maybe of the first 2 minutes. She hit him every single time, and they were beautiful set pieces, and she clearly prepared them. But she knew them so well that, like a good actor, they were spontaneously expressed. Since the debate, and I watched her other speeches, and I watched the Oprah thing, and I have some clips from that. I'll show you guys in a few minutes. But I was hearing those same set pieces repeated, and then I watched her economic speech. I believe it was yesterday or Tuesday. And it's devastating. It is set pieces against Trump for her positions, explaining where she stands for, that are so good. And it made me realize something about her. She works towards an event. It's complete. She delivers it. And then she uses that material as she works toward the next event, which she did with that economic speech. I urge you all to watch it. It's extraordinary. But the reason why I'm saying this is she's a prosecutor. You build a case and you present it to the jury. That's how she works. That's who she is. And we're watching her develop more and more of these set pieces. And she's making them more complex with more detail, but she's doing it beautifully. And he's got to be terrified of debating her again.
Of course.
He's got to be, especially if they show him any of that speech from this week. He will not get near a debate space.
And we're actually going to get to that economic speech in a few minutes, actually. But I know you didn't know we did that, but we added it.
I didn't. Thanks for grabbing something.
Well, and it's important. But I think the other thing about what you said about how she takes the material and works with it, I think the other thing she's not doing that so many stiff Democratic politicians do is they say, okay, guys, we got the message, right? We're messaging now. Now we're going to message. Okay. So, we're just going to say kitchen table issues until our tongues are sore from saying kitchen, like stop just using the same phrase over and over again.
Remember Al Gore's lockbox?
Yeah. Right. It's laughable. It's silly when you just get a phrase and you just keep stupidly repeating it. It doesn't seem intelligent, even if it's actually, you talked about insulting people's intelligence. It's actually kind of assuming that the American voter is not that smart. And so we just build back better, build back. It's got to have alliteration, no,
please,
it doesn't.
Please.
If you have a message, but you can just, you can present it like a prosecutor, tell a story, give an argument, but you don't have to just sloganeer.
Yep.
I think it's a really good point about Kamala as a communicator that she doesn't do that. Okay, so I have two more metrics. The last one is about the economy because that is the one thing that Trump has supposedly had an advantage about. But before we get to that, I want to talk. I call it creepy Vance, but Vance is 30 points underwater as far as approval is concerned, and he started out 20 points underwater. But to know him is to really hate him.
He's not wearing well. He's not
wearing well.
I think we should start calling him Shady Vance.
Well, yeah, we ought to come up with some kind of nickname. Yeah. Shady Vance, sure. Why not? They're trying so hard to humanize him. Now, what we're going to show you next is actually a photograph. And the reason it's a photograph is it was originally a video. Okay. But the video has been removed because it made him look so bad. He was interviewed by Tucker Carlson on his webcast or whatever it is. Okay. And he says he shows up with a dog. Okay. And let's look at the video. We don't have the video, but of the still. We still have the still image. He shows up with a dog. And he says, in the video, which I've seen, which you haven't seen, Carlson says, "Oh, so you brought a dog?" And Vance goes, "Well, it's a rent-a-dog. They thought it might make me seem more human." He actually said that. And so someone tweeted, "I knew it. Weird Vance has a rent-a-dog." I mean, first of all,
no, it's just, it's political malpractice. It's just everything wrong with that. It's like a rookie mistake.
There was also his awkward egg moment that we're not going to show because we don't have time. But if any of you saw it, where he's awkwardly saying that eggs are $4 when they're not, and saying his kids eat 14 eggs, and meanwhile his kids are misbehaving and he's being weird with them. But anyway, we're not going to even show that one. But we are going to show something that actually is not just embarrassing, but I think is really psychologically significant.
It's so amazing when you have kids and you see how innate their personalities really are. So the 7-year-old is probably somewhere around here reading a book. He's like his mother. And the 4.5-year-old is much more like his dad. He's probably trying to find a building to burn down or something like that.
So what does that tell you as a clinician, Harry?
Oh my God, what an association, right? He's
Right.
associating to a kid who's a version of himself who's looking for a building to burn down.
So he's saying, my son's like me. He has antisocial personality disorder.
Well, yeah.
Or his antisocial features.
Well, he's projecting that destructive, impulsive
right
issue that obviously Vance struggles with. I mean, clearly he does.
And also, looking for a building to burn down, it's destruction for the pleasure and joy of it, right? It's pyromania. And that's really what the Republicans are trying to do. They're trying to burn down the country and take control of it. And so he's really showing us, as Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. He's showing us who he is.
Oh, of course he is. But also it's getting through because people don't like him.
Yeah, no, exactly. Even with a rent-a-dog. I mean, how can you hate a guy with a rent-a-dog? I mean, obviously, man's best friend, that's got to humanize him, right? It's funny. He just stood so stiffly with the dog. He wasn't petting the dog. It was like he was just standing awkwardly next to the dog. It was really weird. I wish I could have shown it to you. All right, so the last metric that I'm going to show you, and I know I've been going on about these metrics, but I think it's really important for our morale, but also for us to really understand we're being gaslit, I think, with data. And so the one area which has been a little scary is that Trump has consistently had the advantage on the economy, right? Because we've always been told it's the economy, stupid. Clinton's famous line that elections are often about the economy. That is usually the most important issue to most consumers. So if most people think he's better at the economy, that is a danger sign for us statistically. Well, first of all, his advantage on the economy is shrinking. It was 12 points. It's now 6 points. So it's now only down to 6 points. So there's that. The other thing is Trump had an economic conference or forum or rally at some point this week. I forget what the occasion was. He spent the entire time talking about Haitians eating cats and dogs and things like that. He mentioned the economy a little bit. He talked about it a little bit, but he digressed into all of these grievances. So when he has an opportunity to actually press what is his strength, he actually goes back to his weakness, which is defending himself and his grievances.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can compare that to Kamala talking about the economy. That speech that you talked about, we've got a couple of clips from that.
Cool.
I've always been and will always be a strong supporter of workers and unions. And I also believe we need to engage those who create most of the jobs in America. Look, I'm a capitalist. I believe in free and fair markets. I believe in consistent and transparent rules of the road to create a stable business environment.
And I thought she was a communist. Turns out she's a capitalist.
Please. Yeah.
But also look how well she put that. I'm pro-union and I'm pro-business. And she does, if you watch the speech, she talks a lot about helping small business.
Oh, it's
and
incredible. No, but
the entrepreneurial culture of America. And we'll see a little bit in the next clip. But were you going to say something, Harry?
No. Let's look at the next one.
Okay, let's see the next one.
I believe the source of our success is the ingenuity, the dynamism, and enterprising spirit of the American people. To paraphrase, yes, it is. It's our nature. It's our nature. To paraphrase Warren Buffett, since the founding of our nation, there has been no incubator for unleashing human potential like America. And we need to guard that spirit. We have to guard that spirit. Let it always inspire us. Let it always be the source of our optimism, which is that spirit that is so uniquely American. And let that then inspire us by helping us to be inspired to solve the problems that so many face, including our small business owners. So as I travel the country, what I hear time and again from those who own small businesses and those who aspire to start them is that too often an entrepreneur has a great idea, not too often, that's good, and they have the willingness to take the risk, but they don't have access to the capital that they need to make it real. And as Andrea said, not everybody was handed on a silver platter $400 million and then filed for bankruptcy 6 times. Oh, I said that. I actually said that. Well, we can make it easier. We can make it easier for our small businesses.
It's wonderful. Since she's so comfortable. And every time someone has a complaint, like, she's not comfortable talking about economics, she's just comfortable talking about abortion. And then she gives a speech like this. And John, there's one other part from it that I would have included, but where she says, we built the Empire State Building in a year. We built the Pentagon in 16 months. We can build that quickly again. I mean, it was a kind of a soaring moment, but the speech was a series of these soaring moments. And the two you showed are wonderful. And you can't compete with it. Trump can't compete with those ideas.
We're talking about the difference in kindergarten and graduate school here in terms of sophistication, but also she's got the tone and the spirit of American capitalism just right. As you know, I wrote a book called The Hypomanic Edge, the link between a little bit of craziness and a lot of success in America, about America's entrepreneurial spirit, which I link to the temperament of hypomania, which I believe is linked to immigration, because I believe the secret to America's success and character is immigration, because immigrants are unusual people who have the get up and go to get up and come here. Okay. And so you populate a whole nation with people with that entrepreneurial, high energy temperament that she was talking about. And she's talking about it as that's the DNA of America. That's the spirit of who we are. She's captured it exactly right. And when I published The Hypomanic Edge, I actually earned a little bit of my living giving talks to business groups for a few years. And it was very, very interesting, but they would identify with the America she's talking about.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? The real entrepreneurs, the people who really do drive value in this country and create jobs, they would know. They would identify with Warren Buffett saying that America is the greatest incubator, of human potential and ideas. That's what America's about. That's what the American economy is about. And as I pointed out in my book, the countries that are the highest in new company creation per capita are in order: America, Canada, Israel, and Australia, all nations of immigrants. So that's the other reason why all this anti-immigrant status is insane, because they're actually the source of our wealth.
John, you summarized your book so beautifully in about 30 seconds. Stop doing it. People should go and read it. They can still find it. It's an excellent, excellent read, and utterly original. I mean, no one else had ever said it before.
Thank you, Harry.
No, it's a great book. Well, are we going to move forward with Kamala and Oprah?
Yes. So you have had some clips from the interview with Kamala and Oprah that you wanted to share with us.
Last week, and this is not what we're doing this week. I think John's introduction of this idea of challenging the polls and seeing what's really happening and identifying variables that aren't being tracked by these questionnaires that are asked of people. But what my concern last week was that one of the ways in which Trump wins is by dominating the news cycle, even if it's negative. So he says something vicious, like women are being raped and sodomized by these vicious Haitian legal immigrants or legal migrants, and then everyone gets upset and talks about it, and then there's no room for Kamala. I mean, that's his strategy. Now, again, he's also diminishing what's going on. But by dominating the news cycle, he is ginning up his base, which is his only way to win. Mm-hmm. So one thing I've really been pledging to do on our show is to have a segment where it's just about Kamala. It's not a comparison. It just giving her some space, because not only do I think she deserves that space, because Trump's way of grabbing this space is really corrupt and vicious, but also because she's so psychologically healthy. And just as John and I have been wanting to point out Trump's psychopathology, we also have to point out Kamala's psychological health.
Yeah.
And one index of or indicator of psychological health is spontaneity. Spontaneity in a very authentic way, so that even though you may have a point to make, nevertheless, you can allow what comes to mind and what you're feeling to be expressed. And if you do that, the audience feels it. As someone who's lectured for 30 years, I learned a long time ago that you have to rediscover the ideas as you're lecturing, or the room falls asleep. And more than that, students won't learn unless they're emotionally activated. It's also true of patients in therapy. It's also true of people following a leader. They have to have their emotions activated by the spontaneity and the authenticity of the politician. That Trump can do that in his own negative, narrow way, spewing hate and having his audience identify with his victimhood, as our wonderful guest last week, Arlie Hauschild, explained. But Kamala's doing it in a much deeper, three-dimensional, full way. And that's why I pulled these particular clips, not of her talking points, but of moments where you can see her suddenly becoming more spontaneous. So Rex, let's take a look at the first one.
I have to tell you, there's so much that I love about our campaign, because it really is about the people. And I look around at these screens, Oprah, I look at who's in the room, and this is America. This is America. I was saying with a group of friends earlier, I think in this moment where we've dealt with so much that I think is quite exhausting around powerful forces that would try and divide us and try us to have us as Americans pointing fingers at each other. Yes. That this movement that is about reminding each other that we have so much more in common than what separates us is so critically important. And this is about the strength of who we are as Americans. And this movement that we're in about, as I like to say, seeing in the face of a stranger a neighbor. Yes. Right? An extension of love thy neighbor, that you literally in the face of a stranger see a neighbor.
I think you can't deny the genuineness of that statement. It's emotionally powerful. It reminds people of their connection with one another. Mm-hmm. It's an answer to the racism and the rage of Trump, which again does appeal to the working class that has been so disenfranchised. They really have been, but there she is, knitting things together. And I thought that was a beautiful one.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Harry, about the giving her attention, and also about the contrast between sickness, psychological sickness, and psychological health. This was a depiction of psychological health. And I just want to add one more thing about that quote. It's also an expression of what I would call healthy spirituality.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Love thy neighbor, right? To see the stranger as a neighbor. Would I think that probably Reinhold Niebuhr would agree that that's a summary of Christian ethics in one sentence.
Agreed. Well, the golden rule, but expressed in such a wonderful way. The next one, I really found this intriguing because Oprah, who's a great interviewer, is drawing Kamala out about what happened to her when she was tapped to run for president. Rex?
It seems to us that something happened to you the moment President Biden, stepped aside and withdrew his candidacy, that a veil or something dropped and you just stepped into your power. I mean, literally, looking at you at a speech like the week before, which was a great speech, very nice. And then the next week, I saw you walking in the thing. And I said, what happened? happened to you?
You know, we each have those moments in our lives where it's time to step up.
Time to step up.
Time to step up, you know?
Oprah absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
And you can see that Kamala enjoyed it,
Yeah.
but wasn't going to really talk about it.
Mhm.
It may have made her feel too vulnerable. It may have been too personal. So she said, there are times when we step up. But really, Oprah was saying, you came alive into your power. And, you know, when we had Kamala's biographer on the show a couple weeks ago, he said something so intriguing to me, which was to both of us, and to our audience, which is that Kamala, who to this day does not have a good relationship with her father, who seems very critical and distant, that she and Biden weren't close at first, but that over the 3 years, he brought her in and he taught her and she learned and changed. It's not like, oh, she just is changing her positions because it's not 2019. No, she learned. She was by his side. And I think what happened was that Biden took her on as a daughter. And it's poignant because, of course, he lost his only daughter in the car crash with his wife, his first wife. And so you can imagine Kamala suddenly having a father figure teaching her, and Biden having this powerful younger woman who he can teach. I mean, she's a brilliant person. And it even makes me wonder whether she chose Tim Walz because he's such a father, right? So there's something going on around this. And that's finally, it reminds me of the moment which we all watched together when she went to the headquarters in Delaware the day after she secured the nomination. And Biden was on the speakerphone and said to her, I love you.
Yeah.
It always makes me cry. And she said, I love you too. And I realized after that interview that we had with our guest that of course he said that to her. And maybe the only reason why he did step down or could step down was he felt he could give it to her. So I think Oprah was just on it. She was on the transformation because Oprah is always about noticing transformation. That's one of the things she always notices. Anyway,
Well, you talk about psychological health. There's actually a whole literature on children who survive very bad childhoods and upbringings. And one of the things that they call them invulnerable children.
Right.
And one of the things
resilient.
One of the things that invulnerable or resilient children have in common is they're very skilled at finding mentors.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they're healthy enough that they're looking for healthy adults who will guide them and train them. And because they really genuinely want to learn, they're working collaboratively with those mentors and productively with them. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Kamala's own intrinsic talent. I mean, she learned a lot before she became vice president, and she probably learned a lot just from being vice president. But to be able to work in a mentor-mentee relationship is a sign of health.
Absolutely. And I just, it just opened a little bit of a window onto her and onto Biden, who both felt comfortable enough to say, I love you on camera.
You know, it's really interesting. I mean, in some ways you could say, Kamala's been a fatherless girl looking for a father, and then Biden's been a daughterless man looking for a daughter. I mean, they each have a hole there in their hearts, a gap of some kind. So there is something very, very poignant about them forming this healthy, sort of, if we can call it, father-daughter relationship.
And Kamala and Beau were very close because they're both attorneys general. So there's another reason. In fact, that's one reason why Biden
that's a good point.
So it's multiply determined, as we say in our business, John, to our audience. It means there's many factors that contribute to why psychological events take place. I know I don't want to take up too much time. Let's go. This is a bit that everyone's seen where she talks about owning a gun, but it's a longer clip. So I want you to see how she spins it out.
At the convention, when you said you have guns, no, at the debate.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If
And I thought
somebody
that was
breaks in
powerful.
my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
But
my staff will deal with that later.
But you have been a gun owner for a while.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
But here's my point, Oprah, is that I'm not trying to take everyone's guns away. I believe in the Second Amendment, but we have to agree that, look, I did last fall a college tour with college-age young people, so I also did trade schools, and packed audience every time in their auditorium, and I would ask, please raise your hand if at any point between kindergarten and 12th grade you had to endure an active shooter drill. Almost every hand went up. It was bone-chilling.
Yeah, this is the way our kids are living. Yeah.
And think about it. I grew up, we had fire drills only. Well, I grew up in California. We also had earthquake drills. But the fact that our children are sitting in a classroom where they should be fulfilling their God-given potential and exploring the wonders of the world, and some part of their brain realizes somebody could bust through that classroom door with a weapon, with an assault weapon. And let's all agree that the trauma, so many children, even those who have not directly experienced the tragedy.
Just being in the environment. Being in the environment.
I cannot tell you the number of young people who, our kids had active shooter drills. They're concerned that there might be somebody who would kill them while they are at school.
You see, it's masterful because, first of all, she says that thing about, if someone breaks in my house, they're going to get shot. I don't think that was planned. You can see how anxious she was afterwards. Like, we're going to have to clean this up later.
It was very clever of her to say it and then to make the cleanup comment. and I'll tell you something, Harry. You and I are old enough to remember these obscure moments in previous debates. But do you remember when Michael Dukakis, this is the moment people say he lost the election.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Bernard Kalb, okay, this is about the death penalty. Bernard Kalb said, well, let's imagine that somebody broke into your house and raped and murdered your wife, Kitty. Then would you still be against the death penalty? Okay. And so
yes, I would, Bernard.
Yes, I would, Bernard, because research shows that the death penalty is not effective. I'm sorry. Your wife's dead body is on the floor and you're quoting research? So I like the fact that she just spontaneously said, well, listen, you break into my house, you're going to get shot.
Yeah.
You see, there's because Dukakis looked like such a little wimpy, beta male, intellectualized egghead. It's like your own wife is raped and murdered and all you can think about is a white paper. You're a loser. We can't trust you to be our commander in chief. You're not strong.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Even though he rode in a tank. Remember riding in the tank?
Well, and that's why it looked ridiculous. That's the other image that people point to when explaining why he lost, because he was trying to look macho, and instead he looked like an idiot trying to look macho, popping out of that tank. But in other words, what we're getting from Kamala there is some real humanity. Hey, yeah, I will shoot you. I will protect my house. And that makes me feel like she'll protect our house.
And then she goes on to say that children feel too vulnerable in schools because guns are so easily available and AR style weapons. So she covers both.
Sure. And but that's the Democratic talking point. Okay. The Democrats are always going to say that. Always.
They used to never say the first part. They would only
say but not the first part. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's what's different. That's what's different about her, that she is tough and she is compassionate. But she's both.
And again, she used vivid detail. Mm-hmm. Children sitting in class. I have one more clip, which I just found, again, to be a kind of an evidence of authenticity and strength.
I've met over 150 world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, chancellors, and kings. And the thing about representing the United States of America is when we walk in those rooms around the world, we have historically and traditionally been able to walk in those rooms, chin up, shoulders back, with the self-appointed and earned authority to talk about the importance of democracies. People around the world are watching right now. Because you see, the thing about walking into a room and being a role model is people watch what you do to see if it lines up with what you say. And in that way, the consequences of this election are directly going to impact the American people and people around the world. That's what we're fighting for, and those are the stakes. And that's why we're going to win, because we know what we're fighting for, because we know what we stand for.
I mean, there it is, right? We know what we're fighting for and what we stand for. And that's a kind of quiet strength that I thought was remarkable. So that's my collection of Kamala clips.
Well, thanks,
for
Harry.
this week.
Thank you for that. So we're up to what I call the miscellaneous section of the show. It's not about anything, but they're just things that we just can't let go. One of the themes that we've been following is Trump's whole crypto scam. Okay, that he used to be against crypto, but now that the crypto bros like Elon Musk like him, he's become pro crypto. Also, he's now understands that crypto is a way that you can steal lots and lots of money. Okay. And so he never is one to give up a chance, right, to swindle people out of their money. So now Trump has announced that he's starting his own cryptocurrency. Let's hear that announcement.
Join me live on Twitter Spaces at 8 p.m. this September 16th for the launch of World Liberty Financial. We're embracing the future with crypto and leaving the slow and outdated big banks behind.
So there it is, World Liberty Financial. Are you ready, folks? Of course, he only has the best people.
Of course.
Running World Liberty Financial. Can we see the New York Times cover announcing his Trump rolls out his new cryptocurrency. In a live stream, Donald Trump formally introduced World Liberty Financial, a crypto venture led by two digital currency entrepreneurs with little experience running high-profile businesses. Let's discover who one of those people are, shall we? Mr. Harrow is a relatively obscure figure in the crypto world. As a young man, he has said, he was a habitual drug offender and was imprisoned, but later turned his life around and became rich. In 2022, he appeared at a crypto seminar hosted by Jordan Belfort, who inspired the 2013 movie The Wolf of Wall Street. At that event, Mr. Harrow described stablecoins as, quote, the biggest innovation since sliced bread, and said his favorite of the coins was, quote, vivacious and insane and almost a borderline Ponzi scheme. So the person in charge of cryptocurrency is a known felon who hangs out with the Wolf of Wall Street and says that cryptocurrency is a Ponzi scheme. But if you still weren't sure that he's going to steal all your money, see what Bloomberg Financial has to say about his cryptocurrency.
There's no doubt that WLFI is going to be, if not a pump and dump, a rug pull. Everybody's watching in horror. Even Trump supporters are begging him not to do this because of the negative impact it could have on the industry long term.
Amanda, can you give us real data or hard evidence, as someone who formerly worked for the government in this, as to why you think it's indefinitely going to be a rug pull or a pump and dump? Because many working on the project, I would think, would dispute that.
Yeah, and I really try to be objective, but if you're looking at a project where the incentives are flipped, usually these projects, the organizers hold 20%, maybe less of the tokens. I think Ethereum kept maybe 16%, Cardano was 20%. The Trump organizers are keeping 70%. And even in the 30% that will be released to the public, they're going to make some profit off of that. That is a terrible sign in terms of how it's being structured. The other thing you have to look at is the motive of the people organizing it. Trump's staring down the barrel of a $400 million collection in New York. And this would be personal funds that he could use to satisfy that. So the motives that they have here to make a bunch of money very quickly is unfortunately the worst aspect of crypto. And it's the part of the industry that people do not want to continue.
So a fool and his money are easily parted. So those of you who are fools, please go out and buy his World Liberty tokens.
What else is in your grab bag, John?
Yeah, there you go. That's another scam. Well, one of the things that I keep pointing out is that Donald Trump is clinically and psychiatrically, formally, in a formal sense, disoriented. And by that I mean there are many times where he literally does not know where he is. So, like if you were in an emergency room, they would ask you, and you were in an acutely disordered state, they would do a mental status exam. They'd say, do you know where you are right now? Well, after Donald Trump's rally in Georgia, and by the way, in some of these instances where we've pointed out, that he says he's in Pennsylvania when he's in Arizona, or he says he's in North Carolina when he's in Pennsylvania. Okay. You could say, well, they're verbal slips. These are in writing. After his rally in Georgia, this is what he posted. A great day in Louisiana.
Oh, jeez.
He doesn't know where he is.
Details, John, details.
And then just to put a fine point on it, he posted again. Internal polling in Louisiana has me winning the state by the largest margin I've ever had. MAGA 2024. So imagine that. He's winning the swing state of Louisiana.
Yeah, there it is.
So again, this is really just grossly demented behavior. Just need to point that out. And moving on, the last thing that I'm going to talk about is, we're having a wonderful guest today who's going to talk about the parallels between Trump and Hitler, who's writing a book about searching for Hitler and in different historical contexts. And one thing, and she's going to talk about some of her source, as we say, with the Jews who were supporting Trump. Source is aggravation in Yiddish, for those of you who don't know.
Source.
Did I mispronounce it? Source.
It's okay.
You say source, I say source. Okay. But one of the things that I always keep saying is, hey, guys, you can ally with the anti-Semites all you want. They are always going to still hate the Jews, and they're always going to turn on the Jews in the end.
Right.
Well, as long as he could exploit some Jews to win the election, then he, could be, then there were some good ones, right, that he could laud. Okay. But now that it looks like he's losing, of course, who's he going to blame? Well, of course, it's obvious. The same people they always blame. He's got to blame the Jews.
Absolutely. Show it. Let's see it.
I wasn't treated properly by the voters who happen to be Jewish. I don't know. Do they know what the hell is happening? If I don't win this election, and the Jewish people would really have a lot to do with that if that happens, because at 40%, that means 60% of the people are voting for the enemy. Israel, in my opinion, will cease to exist within 2 years. And I believe I'm 100% right.
There are a lot of people who pushed back on that, a lot of, Anti-Defamation League and other places saying this is putting a target on the Jews back.
Absolutely it is.
If it was the election, somebody's going to go shoot up a synagogue later,
But John, you notice he said he might lose.
That's right.
I'm not hearing that rhetoric of I can only lose if there's cheating. I'm sure he'll start saying that. But lately he's been saying these things.
Now he can only lose if there are bad Jews.
Well, yeah.
All right. Well, so at that, why don't you introduce our guest and let's talk to her.
Excellent. We're so pleased this week to have a guest who just wrote an excellent op-ed in the LA Times. Let me describe her for you. She's a longtime journalist and theater critic, formerly on staff at the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the LA Times. Laurie Winer is a founding editor of the Los Angeles Review of Books and the author of Oscar Hammerstein II and the Invention of the Musical. She recently moved to Southwest France, where she and her husband run a retreat for writers. She is currently at work on a book about her lifelong obsession. Its title is The Hitler Tour. So, Rex, if you could just show the op-ed. So just last week, Laurie had an op-ed in the LA Times entitled, "Nobody's Ever Talked Like Trump Does. It's like no one before, or so it seems." And I have to mention that she mentions us in the op-ed, but that's not why it's a great op-ed. It's absolutely succinct and to the point about his language and his fascist tendencies. So welcome, Laurie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I feel like I know you guys because I listen to the podcast every week. And I have to tell you, I have to give you a compliment. The thing I love about it is not just the information, which is fantastic from, two psychologists, but it's the tone, because you're not, you have a full comprehension of the severity of the situation and possible catastrophic results. And but it's fun. It's not dour or dour, some people say. It's really funny, because the absurdity and the surrealism of the situation is kind of funny, and laughing at it feels really good. And
Thank you.
yeah, so I just love the tone of it, and it cheers me up somehow.
Let me see. And as compliments go, I really appreciate that one a lot, because you get it. You see us. Thank you. I feel mirrored. I feel understood.
I don't see you. I just listen to it, but I still.
No, I mean, psychologically, I feel seen.
John, isn't it great for you to feel understood, really, by someone? It's such a
believe me, it doesn't happen that often. So when it does, it's a red letter day. I mark it in my
I know how you feel.
So, Laurie, we have several questions for you, but let me just start with this one, which is, what's been compelling you about Trump? What's gotten you digging into it?
Well, as you mentioned, the book that I'm working on, I do have a lifelong obsession with the subject of Hitler. When I was probably like maybe some of you, I was shown the films from Bergen-Belsen when I was not prepared to see them at 12 in Hebrew school. And the question is, how did this happen? And that's a question that can take you through an entire lifetime. And indeed, it has been just followed me through my life. I'm constantly reading and going to Holocaust museums and going to sites, and because it's so endlessly fascinating, and you can never really understand it, but you keep trying. And then when Trump shows up, and my own sister, who I love, is a Trump supporter, and we have conversations usually by email when we can stand to do it. But I'm trying to understand her, and also trying to explain to her what I'm seeing has been a big part of the last, 4 or 5 years, 6 years for me.
Interesting, because she's one of the 33% of Jews who are voting for Trump. Right. It's extraordinary. And, another question that I had, and really this came from our email correspondence, but, what is motivating Trump in the long term? Because he seems to be insisting on describing the world in such extreme terms in every way.
Well, it's gotten worse, as you guys have obviously noticed and point out every week. It's getting more extreme, and his reliance on superlatives, describing everything as no one has ever seen anything like it, is it's galling, because you'd think people would find that to be unbelievable when you describe everything like that. And it's also counter to his "Let's make America great again" message, because it was great at one time in his story, but he's describing the world as if no one has ever seen it. The world is completely new. Like he's just, it's a blank slate. Anything can happen. Everything can happen. And I'd like to quote from Richard Hofstadter, who wrote a book called The Paranoid Style in American Politics. And
Oh, yes. It's a great book.
Journalists quote from it all the time because it is so prescient. And he said something that I think speaks to this point, which is, he said the paranoid leader sees the fate of this conspiracy that he is always talking about in apocalyptic terms. He traffics in the birth and death of whole worlds, whole political orders, and whole systems of human values. And so I think that Trump is promising that he's going to start over with something entirely new, and which is exactly what Hitler did. I do wonder about his followers hearing that description over and over and over again. I mean, doesn't it start to bother you that no one's ever seen anything like this before and everything's described that way? It's very strange.
Well, one of the things that was really interesting about your op-ed, because so we're psychologists, you're a theater critic, so you're interested in language, we've been talking about how Trump's speaking in superlatives is a sign of dementia. That's actually one of the clinical signs, is that everything is wonderful or terrible, or just the overuse of superlatives is literally one of the diagnostic features. But from your point of view, what you're saying is, for a paranoid fascist leader, that kind of language is actually fitting, because if you're speaking in apocalyptic language where the world is all bad and needs to be revolutionized, then you are flattening the world into good and bad and terrible and wonderful, and right. And so in a funny sort of way, he has a cognitive disorder that wouldn't fit any other political orientation. But if you're an aspiring Hitler, having dementia might not even be a problem in terms of your ability to make speeches, because if you're flattening everything into good and bad and apocalyptic and idealized, it actually fits the movement.
Exactly. And it's very strange, because I do think it's a sign of his dementia, but I also think that he has an instinct. We know he doesn't read. He has a vaguest idea about history, but these people who emerge as wannabe dictators, they have these same instincts. And one of the instincts is to destroy all subtlety, nuance, and that is what he does with this language. So that so he's, another thing that Hofstadter says is that these kind of catastrophic paranoid leaders emerge in times when people are being guided by fear, and they're so frightened, they're not thinking about things that are negotiable between human beings. They're just fucking terrified. So I think that is a reason why it's happening globally, also because climate change, refugees, resource shortages. I think people are scared out of their minds. And I think that is part of why they're latching on to these apocalyptic leaders.
It's fascinating. And I'm thinking about John's idea about being simplistic and having dementia. Another way to think about it, though, I think politically and maybe psychologically, is that when we're young, we can't think abstractly. A 7-year-old isn't going to be talking about the meaning of life. A 7-year-old is going to be talking about who won the game or who lost the game and how to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about these fascist leaders is that it brings thinking back to childhood, where you don't have to struggle with existential questions or even issues of values or morality. It's just all easy. It's like, this is bad, this is good, these people should die, these people should rule. And it seems to me that with all the anxiety and the poverty among the working class in the US, Trump's message is very reassuring. Everything's pretty clear.
Yeah, it's kind of like having a strong daddy, I guess, in a way. But it's just very discomforting. There's something terribly wrong.
Well, right. Well, it's like a strong daddy who's, abusing your mom and raping other women. I mean, where the aggression is just being acted out all the time.
It's kind of more than like that. It is that, but
It is that. Yeah.
go ahead.
Please.
No, I was gonna say I share your lifetime obsession with Hitler. And
I
I
had
remember,
a sense that you did. Yeah.
and my father had it too, and that's of course where I got it. You mentioned the Holocaust reenactments at Hebrew school. My wife mentioned, so like at her Hebrew school camp, they literally made them go into a camp and like take off their shoes, and so we've really tried to impress on this generation what happened, and so they don't never forget. But I remember my father always had this strange, I call it a Jewish koan. He would just say, the meaning of history is in the Holocaust. And he never explained what he meant by that. And I never forgot it. And so it's something I've been left sort of reflecting. And so one of the, I was just going to say, one of the things is never again, right? That's one of the key lessons of the Holocaust. And so when I see Jews supporting Trump, it makes me furious. I really am intolerant of it, because I feel like, what is it about never again that you don't understand? And I've actually had one person explain it to me. I asked an Orthodox rabbi, and he said, no, never again means they never again let them kill all the Jews. And I said, no.
Maybe a little narrow.
Yeah, that's the narrow interpretation. I don't think you're really getting the spirit of never again here.
Well, I think that's why we get so angry, because Trump is so obviously this type of person. And I think, to paraphrase Anne Applebaum, he is a cancer that we have long ago diagnosed, but apparently we have not cured it. It's amazing to me that Jews, like my sister, can look at this man and not be screaming with her hair on fire. It's just.
Didn't she go to the same Hebrew school you did?
She did. FL in Baltimore. And I have to admit, I do go to a lot of Holocaust museums just to see how they tell the story differently in different countries. And I do kind of, it's not that I enjoy it, but I do like to watch school children taking it in for the first time. It's not, I'm not sadistic or anything, but it's just interesting to see them on their faces, them taking it in for the first time and kind of reliving what that felt like.
In my family, and in our generation at least, every Jewish family had this book. And it was a book about the Holocaust with pictures. And I remember being 10 years old and being asked to sit down with my parents and to look at it. And it was the first time I had ever heard anything about the Holocaust. And it was, I'm still trying to understand it. And yet,
everyone had the same book, like they all in your community, they all kind of had the same book.
I think so. I had other friends whose parents also had this book. Like, I think it was a book that people bought. Like, my parents weren't religious. We didn't go to temple, but they were very proud of being Jewish, and they had this book. But one thing I like when I teach Freud to my undergraduates, I always like to talk about the centrality of aggression in human nature. And as horrible as the Holocaust was and needs to be understood, there's always a Holocaust. I mean, there's just always one. It's not always done for fascist reasons. Sometimes it's just done for territory, or it's done for other reasons. But I think there's something about the crystallizing of the malevolent, narcissistic, paranoid leader 100 years ago that it's spellbinding. I mean, it's really hard not to think about it, right?
Yeah, it's terribly upsetting, and it does happen in waves. This is the last time I'll quote Hofstadter, but he does talk about it happening in waves, and I think it does happen in waves. But I think we're so far away now from the Holocaust. I mean, any living survivor, there's very few left.
Very few.
Very soon there'll be none. And then when Stephen Miller kind of emerged in the Trump administration, I don't know if you guys remember the Statue of Liberty press conference where someone Jim Acosta on CNN said, aren't you changing the meaning of what it means to be American by not letting immigrants in unless they speak English and know computer science? And you're changing the meaning of America. And he said, actually that poem on the Statue of Liberty was not originally on the Statue of Liberty, and it was added later. And this is a white supremacist talking point. That Emma Lazarus, the Jew, added this later to the Statue of Liberty. It's not part of the original meaning. And his grandparents and his great-grandparents on both sides came over from Ukraine, was part of Russia then, and all four of my grandparents did too.
Right.
And he wants to deport 15 million people, and he wants to put them in camps.
In camps. No, they mean it.
They mean it. They mean it. And they've built the camps. During the first Trump administration, he built a camps in the desert capable of holding 250,000 immigrants. And he intended to fill them. It was only he backed off from that plan when people went nuts over the child separation. And so he kind of backed off a little bit. Like even he knew he'd kind of gone a little too far. Of course, if there were a second Trump administration, there would be no such guardrails. And I predict that we would have more than 250,000 people living in camps.
Well, they're saying they're going to deport 15 to 20 million. I mean, they're saying that.
They're saying it. Absolutely.
We're going to create a Gaza in the desert here of refugees, right, who are never going to get out of the camp.
Slave labor, I mean, you often compare how Hitler talks about immigrants to the way Hitler talked about the Jews, which is 100% factual. They're not human. They're animals. They're poisoning the blood of the country.
Poisoning the blood.
Couldn't be any more obvious.
Right.
But I did want to say something about family separation because I'm very interested in that. That's a big point of contention between me and my sister, and I'm sure a lot of people in their families. That is, I think, one of the reasons why Trump's rhetoric around immigrants is the most extreme and ridiculous is because of all of his rhetoric is because it's the closest to real violence, that he's going to commit. And I looked at the timeline of family separation. And I just want to share this one thing with you. It starts in this pilot program in the spring of 2017, right before Stephen Miller does that Statue of Liberty press conference. And news of it starts to leak out because obviously people are witnessing this happening. And the Trump administration absolutely denies it's happening. Over and over again, it is not happening, period, says Kristen Nielsen, who was became the head of DHS. And she wasn't lying exactly because the policy was a zero tolerance for migrants. It referred all migrants, even if they were entering legally, it referred all migrants to the DOJ for prosecution. So the child separation was, an outcome of the policy. It was the point of the policy, of course, as Caitlin Dickerson proved in her Pulitzer Prize winning reporting. But they said that they were doing it for deterrence, right? If you're doing it for deterrence, why do you keep it a secret and why do you deny it? And so it's such proof of the bad faith. And then I just have to share this with you because I went through it.
Yeah.
Trump never announces the policy ever.
He blames Obama for it, doesn't he?
Jeff Sessions announces it, calls it a zero tolerance policy. People start to get upset. Stories start appearing in May 2018. And the first utterance that Trump makes about this policy is he says, I hate the children being taken away. The Democrats have to change this law. And then a couple of days later, he signs an executive order ending the policy that he initiated. And he said these words on that day, which was June 20th, 2018. He said, President Obama had a separation policy. I didn't have it. He had it. I brought the families together. I'm the one that brought the families together. And that same day, his daughter tweeted, thank you, POTUS, for taking critical action, ending family separation at the border. And so it's like, can you be more nefarious and malicious than that? I don't know how.
And the other thing is I always say he has this incredible, almost like a ventriloquist, this ability to speak out of both sides of his mouth. Because I also remember him making pro-child separation statements. But he does this. He'll say, I'm for it, then I'm against it, and then you don't know if he's for it or against it, and there is no reality. But I remember him saying, oh, you have to take the children. You have to take the children.
Oh my God. And he is a bully, and like all bullies, he will stand down if people stand up to him. Like, as you said, when people started screaming about how terrible this was, that's when he started pinning it on Obama, because he can never obviously take any responsibility for anything he does.
For anything.
I want to get back to one of the things you said, because it's so important. You said that he's really preparing us for violence against immigrants, because the language is so much more incendiary. So, okay, Kamala's a communist, and, and I guess you and I, Harry, I don't know, we're bad too. And, we're on the bad list, but these people are subhuman. They've turned, they're like rabid animals that are going to destroy us. They're sodomizing women on the streets of Springfield, Ohio. And so and they have no rights, unlike, we have rights. So even if he wants to persecute us, we can hire a lawyer, we've got money, we've got connections, you know what I'm saying? But these people have nothing. They have no rights, they have no power. And so he can do whatever he wants to them. And he's preparing us for the fact that he will, if he can.
Will. First of all, you guys might have to leave the country if he wins. I preemptively left the country, but
I know that.
The good news is that Trump is more cowardly than Hitler. He doesn't have because he could be held accountable. He does not do what Hitler and Mussolini did, and which assured that no one would speak up against them. He doesn't train men to suddenly attack with terrible violence, because he has to keep at a safe distance from the violence. So he's encouraging people to violence, but from a safe distance, so he can always have this accountability,
plausible deniability.
Yeah, and so that's the good news. But the bad news is there is definitely violence coming, and the extremity of his language is just as sure a sign of that as Project 2025. There is violence coming. There's no question.
I agree with you. I think that what's sort of going for us in part is this early dementia is making him more brittle, less complex, less powerful, in a manipulative sense. There's no long game, so you can bait him. You can just bait him anytime, and he'll stop whatever he's doing and hit back. And then lastly, the thing that's most important to him is good ratings. I'm convinced of that. He would promote any policy that got him popularity.
Well, that's why he blew up at the debate. I really enjoyed that kind of reggae version of the song, They're Eating the Dogs. Her attacking, as you said last week, it was her attacking his crowd size that made him go off the deep end. And she did really a brilliant job. I mean, but so it's a race against time. It's like fingers crossed. I mean, it's a perfect storm. And I do think you're absolutely right. I think he's clearly deteriorating before our eyes, but there's not that much time left.
Yes. Well, yeah. John, do you have another question?
Well, a lot of people ask, what's going to happen when he loses? And I think it's going to be when, not if. What's going to happen to the MAGA movement? And I wonder if I'm so fascinated by what you're doing. I feel like I could have lived an alternate life and done what you're doing and had a Hitler tour. But was there anything, when Hitler killed himself in the bunker, it was over. It was over. Now, of course, they'd lost the war too. But the point is the Nazi movement, more or less, I'm not saying that those feelings disappeared, anti-Semitism, but the Nazi movement was gone, just like the Ba'athist movement was gone when Saddam Hussein. So I'm actually a little optimistic in some ways that the most extreme, insane parts of MAGA will disappear once the head of the snake is destroyed. But I wonder if what you think from your studies.
Well, I'm also hoping that as well. But like, if you went down to, Buenos Aires or, after the war, I mean, there was a whole den of Nazis, like carrying on and celebrating. and once you're that deep into an ideology, you can't disavow it anymore. You've gone too far. I mean, so I think, I think that people have gone down that road. But
well, listen, if Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to go to South America, I'm happy for them all to to take sanctuary in some third world country. But the point is, I don't want them running our country. And I think that I don't know if it's true.
Available down there, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's true. I don't know if that's going to happen, that MAGA will kind of sort of lose its essence or its DNA in some ways once they lose their Führer. It's really a question.
Well, there's Josh Hawley, there's JD Vance, there are people who might carry on the isolationist idea, but they don't have the charisma or the hold over his followers that Trump has.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a phenomenon. I mean, he's so powerful. Even as he's deteriorating, I mean, it's just, and it's so dangerous that it's hard to imagine, right?
But it's also incredible to watch, and as human beings, we do love drama, and it's amazing drama. I don't enjoy it. It is, but in a sense, it is fascinating.
Just one more question. So if he does win, can Harry and I come and stay at your Airbnb in France?
We have a lot. We have a
your writer's retreat.
Your writer's retreat.
We have so much room. You wouldn't believe it. And the housing prices here are amazing. Look at housing prices in the Dordogne online. You can't afford not to live here. I'm telling you.
Thank you. So we have a plan B now, Harry.
Laurie, it was just such a pleasure to have you on.
It was really a thrill for me because I am a big fan. I'm a super fan.
All right. Well, we'll stay in touch.
Please do. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Well, that was a terrific interview. I'm really glad we had a chance to talk with her about all that.
Me too.
Stuff.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she's really, really great. So I guess we're up to the shrink wrap section of the show, Harry. What have we learned this week?
As always, we learned a lot. But I wanted to close our show with this short clip of Joe Biden at the UN, which is really his swan song, his last appearance on the world stage to the UN, the United Nations, as president. And I was very, very impressed by this particular part of it.
Let me close with this. Even as we navigate so much change, one thing must not change. We must never forget who we're here to represent. We, the people. These are the first words of our Constitution, the very idea of America. They inspired the opening words of the UN Charter. I made the preservation of democracy the central cause of my presidency. This summer, I faced a decision whether to seek a second term as president. It was a difficult decision. Being president has been the honor of my life. There's so much more I want to get done. As much as I love the job, I love my country more. I decided after 50 years of public service, it's time for a new generation of leadership to take my nation forward. My fellow leaders, let us never forget, some things are more important than staying in power. It's your people.
Now that is a wisdom, graciousness, eloquence, and honesty that Donald Trump is utterly incapable of.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That was like a very sort of sweet goodbye. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. John, we wanted to have introduce a new segment to our show at the end. And this is from our viewer mailbag. And I chose a letter that I thought we could really answer to our viewers. And this is what it says. My husband and I have been enjoying your show almost from the beginning, and we like your on-air personas. John is more out there and Harry is more laid back. But sometimes performances are deceptive. Who are you both in real life away from your webcams? So, John, what are you like when you're not on camera?
Well, that's a very astute question because, actually, in real life, I'm a lot more like you come off. I'm actually very calm, and I actually speak much more slowly, and I'm much more reasonable, and I have a concerned, compassionate look on my face. And when I'm saying something really wise, I sometimes hunch my shoulders a little bit, actually, in real life, I'm a much more calming presence.
Oh.
What are you like, Harry?
John, I'm a little bit on the other side of things. This is what
Really?
I'm kind of like in real life. We're going to fucking get him, man. We're going to win. We're going to win. Let's look and see how goddamn crazy he is. Can we have some music? I feel like dancing.
Got the beat. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I'm a never Trump guy.
Okay, Rex, let's hit it.
I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him.